Hi everyone, Savannah here, and today we're painting a cozy, mysterious scene. A little ghost gazing into an old mirror lit by candlelight. I'm using Procreate on my iPad with my custom brushes, which you can download below in the description, as well as the free color palette and template that I use in this video, so let's go ahead and jump right on in. The first thing we're going to do is change that background color, so click Layers, click Background Color, and click that light cyan blue color. Then we're going to create a new layer, bring it below the outline layer, grab your square blend brush, and we're going to start adding in some darker color to the right of the mirror here and underneath the ledge as well. We're just going to be using the dark cyan blue color and that really dark cyan blue color in these two areas. And we're using that square blend brush here so that we can blend this out with the background. So I'm going to keep that light blue background as is. We're not going to add a lot of texture over it. We're really only adding texture where the shadow is for this mirror. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm building up the shadow here. And then I'm going to grab some colors that are kind of blended in between this darker cyan blue color and this medium dark cyan blue color. And we're going to blend those out together with the background as well. So we'll pick up those colors here in a second, like I'm doing here. Just holding your finger down and it'll grab those colors in those colors that were blended in between, and then you can use that to blend these out further. And keep blending this out until it's looking how you want. Now we will add a lighter color to the left here, but we'll do that towards the end of our drawing here once we add in the candle and all the colors that we're using for that. But for now, we're just going to work on the shadow on the right side and we'll start building up the layers after this. And again, just keep blending with that square blend brush, grabbing these colors. You can grab the main colors from the color palette or those in between colors, but we're just going to keep blending this out until we like how it looks. Now I'm happy with how that looks. So I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to grab one of the yellow colors. So I'm going to do this darker orangey yellow color. That circle brush, I'm going to add in the candle here first. Now I went a little bit darker with the color, but we will lighten it up as we add in some details. So just go ahead and trace and fill this in. Don't worry about adding details quite yet for this. We will in a second. We're just going to trace and fill that in. And once you have that filled in, I do like turning the outline layer off so I can make sure the edges are looking good, because once we do alpha lock on the layers that we're creating here, you want those to be the right shapes. You don't want to try and tweak it when you're adding in details. So that's what I'm doing here. And now on a new layer, I'm grabbing this brown and we're going to trace and fill in the shape of the candle holder as well. Now on a new layer above that background layer, we're going to add this floating ledge here. I am going to use this kind of dark red orange color, and I'm actually going to use my square blend brush for this, mainly because I want the edges to blend a little bit more into the background. I don't want them to be as stark against that background, so that's why I'm using the square blend brush for this. But we're going to just add this color in, and then I'm going to add a little bit of a darker color towards the front to show kind of the lip of um, the shelf here, and then we'll keep working on adding in kind of blocking colors for the other objects in the scene. Now I'm going to grab this dark, almost black color. It's a dark grayish magenta is what the name of it is. And I'm just going to, with that square brush, add that to the front. I'm still using that square blend brush. I'm just pressing a little bit harder because it is a pressure sensitive brush. So I want more of that pigment to come in. So that's what I'm going to do here is just add a little bit more pigment here. And that's going to be the window, or excuse me, not the window ledge, but the shelf ledge. Now let's create a new layer above that shelf ledge, and we're going to start filling in the shape of the mirror. Now I was trying to decide what base color I wanted to use. I end up using the dark cyan blue color, but the problem with that is that it matches the background color that we added in. So I'm going to turn that background layer off and fill in the shape of this mirror. I'm going to use the circle brush for this, but if you want to keep that background layer on, you definitely can. It just makes it a little bit harder. Don't worry, we are going to add a lot of color details to the mirror, so it's not going to blend in with the background, but I wanted to use this as the base color because it's easier to start with a darker color for things and then add light color on top of it. Now let's create a new layer and do the actual reflective mirror part of this. And so I'm going to grab the cyan blue color, the same one we used for the background, and I'm going to trace the oval here now to make it a perfect oval. When you get done tracing it, hold your pencil down and that will snap it into an oval shape. And then if you want it to be more vertically aligned, tap your finger down while still holding that Apple Pencil down, and that will make it nice and vertically aligned. You don't have to keep it vertically aligned. I did for this particular image, but just know if you hold your pencil down, it will make it a nice oval. And now let's go ahead and create a new layer above the candlestick holder, and we're going to do the flame. So I'm grabbing the yellow orange color and I'm just going to trace the shape of the flame here, and then I'm actually going to erase a little bit of the center. I'll show you what I mean here in just a second, but we're going to just trace and fill it in, get the shape that we like, and then I'll erase the center here to give it a little bit more of a flame look. And I also grabbed that dark, almost black color to do the wick on the candle there as well. Now we're going to add the ghost. So we're going to do a new layer right above the mirror layer, set it to clipping mask, and grab that light grayish orange color and trace and fill in the shape of the ghost. The reason we did clipping mask is so that we can just draw the shape without worrying about going outside the mirror here. You don't necessarily have to do that, but it keeps the ghost shape in that mirror so you don't have to worry about erasing the edges. So as you can see here, I'm just filling this in and I'm going definitely outside the shape of the mirror, but because we set to clipping mask, it doesn't go outside of that shape. So I like to do that, but don't feel like you need to do that if you don't want to. If you want to erase as you go, you can definitely do that as well. And now we will start working on adding in details. So I'm going to set every layer to alpha lock, and then we'll go through and start adding in details to each of these layers. Let's start with the mirror or the edge of the mirror here, and I'm going to grab the grayish cyan blue color for this. Using that circle blend brush, I'm going to start adding some shape to this mirror. I want to give it a little bit of texture, some interest, so I'm just going to very lightly go in with this lighter color with that circle blend brush and add a little bit of interest. Now you can play with any shape that you want. I'm kind of doing these kind of squiggly lines here just to give it some interest. I am going to go back over it with some straighter lines towards the end of this video here, but for now I'm just kind of adding in some squiggly lines, and we'll keep building up different colors similar to this kind of style here that we're doing. And I am going to turn that background color back on so that as I'm adding in these other colors, I can see what maybe colors I need to pull in to distinguish between the mirror here and that background. So I'm going to go in with that same color we've been using just towards the edge to lighten it up a little bit so we have that distinction so it's not blending together. And I'm going to go in with that medium blue color that we used in that background. We're going to pull in a lot of these colors, but don't worry, we are also going to pull in some oranges. As you can see in that bottom left image, it's not going to be a blue mirror. It will have a lot of orange as well from that light from the candle, but we're going to just keep building up these layers. So I'm just grabbing a lot of these blues, darkening areas where it's a little too light, lightening areas where it's a little too dark, and I'm just going to keep adding in details around this mirror. Have fun, play with it, do different shapes. You don't have to do exactly kind of what I'm doing here. If you want to do a different style mirror, then you could definitely do that, but we're just going to keep building this up layer by layer with different colors. Now I'm going to bring in some warmth, so I'm grabbing that red orange. There are several other orange colors you can use in this palette, but I'm going to use that red orange first. Like I mentioned, I usually like to start darker and go lighter with my colors, so I'm going to start dark with that red orange and then add in some lighter colors on top. And as you're building out these colors, make sure you're paying attention to where your light source is. So our main light source is that candle right there. So a lot of the orange and brighter orange colors are going to be on the left side of the mirror and less so on the right side. I am still pulling in some of the oranges on the right side, but it's going to be darker oranges, not as bright because it's not right up against that candle there. And so again, be mindful of where your light source is. If you're doing a different shape than I am, then that will be important for you to do that, but I'm just going to start building up this lighter orange color on the left side, and we'll just keep building this up. And again, like I mentioned, I'll add a few more details towards the end of this video, but for now I'm just building it up with these different colors. And I'm happy with the mirror for now. Like I mentioned, we will come in and add a few more details towards the end. But for now, let's go ahead and go to the ghost layer and add two eyes for the ghost. I'm just using that dark, almost black color and just adding the two eyes. Now we will add a little bit more to the ghost here. As you can see in the image in the bottom left, he has a little bit of a transparent look to him. We will work on that here in a second, but let's keep building up some of these layers. Now I'm going to go to the flame and I'm going to erase a little bit of the center. I'm using the soft brush for this. It's a Procreate standard brush, and I'm erasing the center of it to make it look more like a flame. And then I will also add in a little bit of color variation because it's not just one color, it's multiple colors. So I'm going to grab some of that red orange, some yellow, some other orange colors. I'm just going to lightly add in the color variation to make it look more like a flame. And I'm going to duplicate this layer and give it a little bit of a glow. Now I will add more glow throughout this image. As you can see in the bottom left, we have a lot of glow, but for now I'm going to duplicate that layer that we just worked on, change the blend mode. I think I used add for this one. And then what I did was do a Gaussian blur on that, and make sure before you do that, you turn this layer alpha lock off. So I'm just going to click in here, make sure that alpha lock is turned off, go to my adjustments tab, click that Gaussian blur and just blur it out a little bit, and it gives it this nice soft little glow. Now let's go ahead and add in some more details to some of our other objects. We have our candle, so I'm going to work on that right now. I'm just going to add a little bit of yellow to the wick there just to brighten it up just a smidgen, and then I'm adding in almost like the wax is dripping down the front of the candle here. I'm just adding that here along the candle. I'm still using that very light color for the section, and then you can pull in some other colors. So I used a little bit of that orange, pulling in some more yellow, but I'm trying to make it look a little bit like the wax is dripping down the side of this candle. And I am bringing a little bit of that orange down below on the candle as well. So it's not just the dripping part. I want to pull in a little bit of that on the candle to give it a little bit of interest. And now I'm going to add some detail to the candle holder, and I'm going to start with that dark red orange color. I'm using that circle blend brush, and I'm just kind of placing the shape of how I want this candle holder to look like, and then I'll go in and add more details, more colors and things like that to build it out more, but I'm just kind of placing how I want it to look before I do that. Now that looks good to me, so I'm going to pull in some other colors. We have some other browns here. Feel free to pull in any of the colors. I'm just kind of following the shape that we just created with that dark red color, and adding in some other colors. So I'm also doing some darker colors around the edges where there would be more shadow because the light's not hitting from that candle, it's not hitting those areas. So I'm just adding a little bit darker areas, and then going back over it with some of these brown colors to soften that, because if you use that dark black color, it's a little too dark in some areas. So if you just go over it with some of the brown colors, it softens it a little bit. And then I'm adding in some of this light orange in areas where that candle might be hitting and reflecting off of the candle holder. So just keep building up these layers. You can start with the darker colors and build it up from there, or the lighter colors, but we're just going to keep building up the colors here until it's starting to make shape, or turning in the shape that we want it to look. Now I'm going to go in and update the mirror. I'm just going to grab a dark red orange color. I'm going to pull in a couple colors, but I'm going to start with this dark red orange and just add these kind of straighter lines that follow the shape of that mirror. I felt like it was getting too squiggly for me here, so I just wanted to tone that down just a little bit. So I'm going to add some of those lines on the left as well, just grabbing that red orange color because it's a little bit brighter. I'll use a darker red on the right side, but I'm going to just kind of brighten it up a little bit more with these red tones. And then I'm also going to go a little bit darker towards the inner part where that mirror is, because I'm trying to think of, where would those shadows be? Where would that light be hitting? So I'm just going to keep building this section up, and then we'll move on to adding more details in some of these other areas. And I am going to add more yellow and orange or brighter orange to this because it was a little too dark and I really want to make it bright near where that candle is. So I'm going to lighten those sections up, and I am going to add just a little bit of that on the inner right side of the mirror here, where it might hit from that candle there. So I'm just going to lighten up a few sections, and then we'll move on. Now I'm going to use the same technique that we did for the flame, where on the ghost where I erased the center part. I want this ghost to have a little bit of transparency, and so that's what I'm going to do here. We still have that soft brush selected, so I'm just very lightly erasing the center of the ghost here. Now on that background layer that we were working on, we do now need to add some lighter tones to the left side where that candle is. So I'm actually grabbing brown That's going to be my base color, and then I'm going to lighten it up with some oranges on top of that. But for now, I'm just adding in this brown to lighten the wall here, and then like I mentioned, we'll start pulling in. We have some of the oranges here. There's a lot of different oranges, so feel free to pick which ones you want to use. I went with this slightly darker than what we used on the actual candle, but we're just going to keep building up this section, making sure as you get closer to that candle, you use brighter colors, and as you go further away it blends back out with that blue background. So add those colors in, same technique that we used for the background when we did the blue side. Pull in those in between colors, but let's start blending in and making it a little bit brighter on the left side. Okay, now I'm going to work on the shelf here to give it more character and more dimension. It's looking very flat against everything else we're working on. So using the square blend brush, I'm going to start adding in some lighter tones. Now again, being mindful of where our light is hitting, where there might be shadows. You could pull in a lot of the different colors from the color palette, but I'm just going to start adding in some lighter colors, and then I'll tone down certain areas where that shadow would be. So we have shadow underneath where the candle is sitting, and also to the right where the mirror is up against, and we're just going to tone those two areas down for those shadows. But we're just going to keep building up this shelf, again pulling in a lot of the different colors, whichever colors that you like from that color palette. Now, because this is a pressure sensitive brush we're using, I can pull in this dark black color and just very lightly add in some shade here or some shadows here. I don't have to press too hard. In some areas I do where it's up right against where the object is, but I can very lightly blend that out with the base color. Now, one last thing I'm going to do here is grab that brown color and just very lightly go over the front where this black line is at the front edge of this shelf. I'm just going to lighten it up just a little bit with that brown. Now we do have one more thing to do for the mirror here, and that's to bring that candle inside. Now I did not do it separately because I wanted this to be the exact same candle that you see in the reflection. So what we're going to do is just duplicate those layers. You just swipe left on that layer, select duplicate, and then when you have those two layers duplicated, you're going to drag them. So just select them both, drag them below the ghost layer, and it's going to automatically set them to clippy mask to that mirror. Now, I didn't want this candle to be as bright in that reflection as it is in where the candle is lit. So I'm just going to go into hue, saturation, brightness, and bring that color down just a little bit. I didn't, again, want it to be super bright and colorful as it is outside of the reflection. And then the other thing is I didn't want it to be lit. So I wanted it to be out, like it was just blown out, and so we're going to add a little bit of smoke above the candle. Now you can grab the gray color here, you can use any color. I'm using that circle blend brush, and you can kind of do whichever shape you want to do. I originally started just go straight up above the ghost, but it wasn't really showing as well as I wanted it to, so I kind of changed it to have it blowing out to the side of the left here of the ghost, and I like that look better. So this was just me here experimenting with, maybe it was a little bit more spread out around the ghost, but it just wasn't reading right to me. So I scrapped that and did just a single kind of trail off to the left here that you see here. Now I do want to add just a little bit of definition to the actual reflection of the mirror here. So I'm just going to grab the same colors we used for the background, that square blend brush, and just very lightly kind of using that same technique. I'm just going to pull in some of those colors and blend them in the background here. I'm not going too dark with the colors. I just want it to kind of match the wall that we have here, but not stand out too much. Now I do want to add more glow to the scene, so on top of all of the layers that we have created here, I'm going to add a new layer, and we're going to have this be more of a glowy layer, and I'll show you what I mean here in a second. But grab one of those lighter colors. I'm going to use yellow orange for this. You want a warm bright color for this because again, this would be glowy. You don't want to use blue, it's not going to work. We want it to be a warm kind of yellow is what I'm using here. And I'm just going over areas where I think that light would be hitting or that candlelight would be hitting. And I'm just adding bits here and there using the circle blend brush. I'm not going too heavy handed with it because I don't want it to read too bright. I just want certain spots to kind of reflect that light. And I am going to go over the flame again as well because that is our center of brightness and I want it to stand out really well and make it very clear that that is where this light is coming from. And then once you have those lighter areas filled in where you want them to be filled in, then you can go to that layer, change the blend mode. I end up using vivid light for this and I turned the opacity layer down to about 40% for this layer because I didn't want it to be so bright. Once you have that all set, then we're going to do a Gaussian blur on it because I want this to be more of a soft glow, like it's from the candlelight, and so that's why I wanted to blend it out just a little bit. And then like I mentioned earlier, I did two blend modes, so I'm duplicating this layer. I have that vivid light layer on top, and then I'm going to change the layer or the blend mode for the layer down below. For this, you can have, you can do add, you can do color dodge, you can do screen. There's a lot of different options. It just depends on what you want to do. I think I used add for this layer, but again, you can play around with the different blend modes and see which one works best for you. And then I went into adjustments and I updated the saturation brightness. So I brought the saturation up quite a bit and the brightness down a little bit. I wanted more color to be pulled through for this bottom layer, and so that's what I did there. And then you can again play with the opacity for this until you tweak it to what you want it to look like. There's no right or wrong, it's just your personal preference. And then the last thing that I did here, or one of the last things I did here, was just erase a little bit of light around the candle or the flame here. I went a little too heavy handed, so I just want to tweak that just a little bit and bring it down. And then I'm also adding a little bit of light to the surface of the tabletop here, which is something that I forgot to do. So I'm going to do that and then we'll be done with our image. And there we have our ghostly reflection. Thank you so much for following along with this video. If you enjoyed painting this quiet ghostly reflection, don't forget to like, subscribe, and also leave a comment. What do you think would be staring back at you in a reflection? I'll see everyone in the next video.